We also have two different methods of making cakes, which I am going to illustrate. The first is the whisking method, where the eggs and the sugar are beaten together until they are very light and fluffy, and I have made a Swiss roll by that method. Or the creaming method, where the margarine and the caster sugar are beaten together very, very well until they are light and fluffy, and they are then combined with the other ingredients, and we have creaming method cakes with varying numbers of eggs in them, and we can also use that same method for making a steamed pudding. I'm going to demonstrate the making of a Swiss roll. This is going to be an ordinary jam Swiss roll. There are many variations. You can flavor your Swiss roll with chocolate or coffee, and you can put in fresh cream and various other fillings, but today we are going to make a plain jam Swiss roll. Take your flour and a pinch of salt and sift them very well. Many recipes suggest that you sift the flour at least 2 or 3 times to aerate it as much as possible, because there is no baking powder used in a Swiss roll. Next, we are going to beat the egg white. We do it in this order so that we do not have to change the beater on the electric beater. Beat the egg white until it reaches the stiff peak stage. The egg white is now holding its shape. Put it to one side and beat your egg yolks. Slowly adding the vanilla and the lemon juice. And the sugar, the caster sugar, little by little. Once all the sugar has been added, carry on beating your egg yolks until they are cream-colored and very light and fluffy. The egg yolks are very light and fluffy and have paled from their original yellow color. To this, I'm going to add my flour, my sifted flour and salt. And I'm going to fold the flour in with an up and over movement, using a metal spoon, as the metal spoon has a thin side, and this is not going to beat the air out of the egg yolk mixture. Now add the beaten egg white. And fold that in. The egg white is now incorporated. It's most important at this stage not to over stir your Swiss roll. Here I have a Swiss roll pan, which is a small baking tray, which we have lined with greaseproof paper and sprayed with cook and spray. Pour the Swiss roll batter into the pan. Spread it very gently so that it covers the bottom of the pan. And place your Swiss roll in the oven on the middle shelf at 200 degrees Celsius for 8 to 10 minutes. The Swiss roll is about ready to come out of the oven. Here I have half a sheet of greaseproof paper, which I'm going to spread with caster sugar. Be quite generous with your caster sugar, as this stops the Swiss roll from sticking to the paper. Take the Swiss roll out of the oven when it's golden brown, and if you touch it with your forefinger, it should not leave an indentation which indicates that it's cooked. Loosen all the way around the sides with a knife. And turn the Swiss roll out onto the caster sugar. Remove the paper very carefully. Here I have some softened apricot jam. You can use strawberry jam or youngberry jam. And this I'm going to spread right to the very edges using a small spatula. Make quite sure that the jam goes to the edges of the Swiss roll. If the jam that you are going to use comes out of the refrigerator, you could perhaps heat it up slightly just to soften it and make it easier to use. Right, there my Swiss roll is spread with jam. I now remove the crusts using a sharp knife. And then I'm going to roll my Swiss roll using the paper, or using the paper to help me get the Swiss roll to roll. And I'm going to leave it rolled in the paper so that it retains its shape until such time as I want to serve it. I'm going to demonstrate the creaming method, and once I've made the batter with the creaming method, I'm going to use it to make a steamed pudding. When doing the creaming method, you sift your dry ingredients, your flour, your salt, your bicarb, and your mixed spice. Sift it all together onto a plate. Use a spoon to get rid of all the flour. Put that to one side. In my mixing bowl, I am going to put margarine, and my caster sugar. At this stage, you would add vanilla, but we are using mixed spice as instead. I'm also going to crack my egg. Now I have all my ingredients ready. I also have my pot of boiling water and my steamed pudding mold. Beat the margarine and the sugar together until it is light and fluffy. We use caster sugar in the creaming method because the crystals are much finer. It creams more quickly and dissolves more quickly than ordinary white sugar. As you can see, as the margarine becomes softer, so it combines with the sugar, and we must continue beating it until it is very cream colored. The margarine and the sugar is now very well combined, and I'm going to add my egg and beat it some more. That is looking very well aerated. To it, I'm going to add my flour alternately with the milk. I'm going to add some more flour. Now you can see that the dough is getting stiffer. I'm going to add some milk. And I'm going to continue alternating the flour and the milk until the ingredients are used up. I have mixed in the last amount of flour, and I've added enough milk to make a dropping consistency. A dropping consistency means that the dough will slide slowly off the spoon. Here I have my mold, which has been greased with spray and cook. Into it I'm going to place some jam and make what is known as a jam cap pudding. Or you can use syrup and make a syrup pudding. And just for a little bit of variety, I'm going to add some sultanas to the dough as well. The steamed pudding is very versatile. You can use any flavoring that you wish, spices like we have here, or vanilla, chocolate, orange juice. You can put dried fruit into it if you so wish, and make various puddings. Here I'm going to put the dough into the mold. On top of the jam. Don't worry about smoothing it over, as the dough softens with the heat, so it will spread itself. I'm going to place the lid on the pudding, and I have greased the lid so that as the pudding rises, it doesn't stick to the lid. And I'm going to clip the lid on. Here I have boiling water, which is going to reach halfway up the sides of the steam pudding mold. I'm going to replace the lid, and this must boil gently for an hour so that the pudding is cooked. I'm going to illustrate the making of butter icing. Perhaps I should explain that we don't use butter, we use margarine, but it is still referred to as butter icing. It's better when you're making icing to always sift your icing sugar, which is a very fine powder and is inclined to lump. when you are pressing flour or icing sugar through a sifter, use a metal spoon. Here I have my margarine, to which I'm going to add some vanilla. You can flavor it with coffee essence. You can flavor it with cocoa or melted chocolate, any of the flavors that you would wish to use. I have softened the margarine with the beater, and I'm now going to add sifted icing sugar. Once again, I'm going to beat it in, but I'm going to beat it in very slowly. The beater is finding it heavy going as the icing is quite stiff, so I'm going to continue using a wooden spoon. I've added the last of the icing sugar. And you can see that the consistency of the icing sugar is rather dry. So I'm going to add very little milk, just to get it back to being a spreading consistency. As you can see, I used about 2 teaspoons of milk, which is all that I needed to get the consistency of the icing sugar correct. And you can tell that the consistency is correct by lifting the spoon up, and the icing sugar will make peaks that only bend over slightly. Here I have a creaming method cake made with 2 eggs. The exact same method that I used for the steamed pudding was used to make this cake, where you beat your margarine and your sugar until it is very light and fluffy before you start adding your other ingredients. Because this cake has the minimum number of eggs in it, we ice it with butter icing. Using a spatula, I spread the icing on the cake. The cake must be ice cold before you ice it with butter icing. Butter icing contains a large quantity of margarine or butter, and if you spread it onto a warm cake, the icing separates and you have a very greasy cake because you have melted the margarine with the heat of the cake. So you must remember that your cake must be absolutely ice cold. If you wish, you can ice the sides of the cake. This is not absolutely necessary. It is personal preference as to whether you want to ice the side of your cake or not. You can also smooth the icing completely, or you can leave the knife blade patterns on the icing, or you can use a fork to make patterns on the icing of the cake. To finish the cake off, you can use cherries. These you chop in half, place half a cherry in the center of the cake, and because cherries are so expensive, you can then place quarter cherries round the edges of the cake. Here I have a creaming method cake made with 5 eggs. This is a much heavier, richer cake, which we don't ice. It is eaten plain, and it's often referred to by the name a Madeira cake, and it can either be made with 5 or 6 eggs, which makes it very, very rich. If we slice the cake, we will see that the color is very yellow from the large number of eggs. The texture is very close, and the texture itself looks heavy because the cake has so much margarine and so many eggs in it.